Hello everyone, thank you for joining me. It's just 1 minute past 2 o'clock Sydney time, so I think I might get started. And while we do the preliminaries, people will be joining, and they shouldn't miss much of the content because we're getting new people coming in all the time, so we do kind of have to touch on the few starter slides. So as usual, I'll go to the usual start slide. So while we're in here, we are being recorded, so if you could mute your lines, which I see everybody is, which is great. If you want to ask a question as we're going through, there is the raise hand button there. You can raise your hand and hopefully I can see that, and you can ask your question right then and there. Alternatively, there is the Q&A box in your GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar panel. You'll see that under, I think it's called questions. If you expand that, you can put the questions in there. That'd be great. And sometimes there's even a chat one. I'm not sure if that's been turned on for this webinar. So yeah, keep the lines muted unless you're actually asking the question. That helps keep the audio quality nice, clear and crisp. But feel free to raise your hand. I'll unmute you, and I'd love to hear your voices to add a bit of depth and variety to the sultry tones, which mine are. And I said this is recorded. It is made available on the Success Hub later on. Quick trick there is you want to get to it straight away or share it. If you go to the registration page, you can often get the previous one very quickly. I think it's within a couple of hours afterwards. It's a bit of an automated process. My name is David Manning. I'm a designated support specialist based out of Sydney, Australia. And my primary area is Plant 3D, but I cover a lot of products you can see there. I've spent a number of years in the industry working with Autodesk and some of our competitor products as well. Okay, and Vinod, who is not yet with us, is often with me. If he joins us, he may come in a bit later, is one of our product support specialists who you may deal with cases on a regular basis. So it's good to be able to see his face, know who you're talking to when you get him on the line. He's not here right now, but he's often answering questions in the Q&A while we're going through the topics. Now, there is a slight change today or this month, and it will continue through the rest of the year. With the agenda, as you'll see there, we've got the overview as we always go through. Then we go through to the Plant 3D news with some general updates and some things that are happening in the industry from the Autodesk side that we might think you might find useful. Try and help you leverage the most value you can out of the tools you've got available to you. And rather than a bullet point series, sorry, he's pinging me there. You probably can see that. Sorry, I'm going to go kill that somehow. Yeah, sorry. But when rather than going to pull bullet points into the topics, we've opted for more of the theme statement so that it's a bit more user friendly and a bit more explanatory of what we're actually trying to do for that particular month. And I'll just jump over to the virtual community meetup resources store as well and show you that we've updated this. I think I did it yesterday, quite honestly. So you can see each month we've got a main agenda theme listed out in each of the months all the way through to December. And obviously this month is February, so we're going through that. And that's what's listed in the presentation there, touching on databases and what significant advantages and value they'll have. We also want to look into integrity and avoiding those nuisance problems when dealing with a database system. For that, we'll go into some dedicated Q&A time where I can go through some live demos, and I'd love to hear from you there. Please, at any stage you get any questions, drop them into the Q&A panel. We can dig through it at the end. We'd love to sit down. I've got Plant open already. We can go through any of those questions when they come up. So as an overview here of these sessions, for those who haven't been here before, this is supposed to be a routine engagement, so we do it every month on the second Tuesday. We aim for 2 o'clock Sydney time, so that's Australian Eastern Daylight Time at the moment, which is a good time to catch everybody from New Zealand and that side of the time zone all the way over to India as well, and that sort of region. And if people are early birds, they might be over in Europe as well, or even as far over as Alaska, because there's only a couple of hours difference between Alaska and New Zealand, funnily enough. So we get right across Asia Pacific. There is a session run in Europe and another one in the US if you can't get to this one as well. And so they are recorded if that happens to be the last thing. Unfortunately, if watching the recording, you don't get to ask questions as we're going through, which is one of the huge benefits of being here with me today. Safe harbor statement as always. we are going to talk about the product. If we happen to talk about the future of the product, I can only tell you what I believe is current today and my experiences. If you need to make, if you make any decisions for your business or purchasing going forward, please absolutely verify that direct with Autodesk in writing rather than my statements. And so I'll be honest with you as best as I can, but that's today's knowledge, and things may be happening in the background I'm just not simply aware of yet. So just be aware of that. And with that, we'll jump right into the content. So for those of you who have not seen it before, we are currently running a Plant 3D beta. That's for the 2021 version, and it is specifically for testing AutoCAD Plant 3D with BIM 360 Docs as the collaboration platform. The big news there is, of course, that has been changed. It was due to time out on the 20th of January. It now times out on the 18th of March. So if you've been in the beta and your license is no longer valid in the beta version, you can jump in the forums. Somewhere in the forums there's a thread that gives you the new license details, and you can refresh your license and off you are again. And don't forget to let us know your feedback. And to that point, the product team have been asking for some specific feedback around the beta forums, particularly in understanding people's experience in taking a collaboration project backup and uploading that backup into the Docs environment for testing. So what we're looking at here is trying to understand any problems people might have taking an existing collaboration project, taking a backup that's in BIM 360 Teams, mind you, and dragging that down as a backup locally, and then resharing that back up to Docs to leverage the new environment. All the testing I've done has shown that to be an absolutely seamless process, although I don't have some of the big projects you guys will have, or the complicated ones, so we're really looking forward to understand if there's any issues. And if you do plan to use the Docs feature when it comes out, could be a great time. It's a perfect time to get in there to try and get some feedback to the development team, because if you do have issues, really get it done, get in there now and get some fixes out there before it's released would be ideal. On a similar thread, so we do our monthly meetups, which is fun with today, and thank you for coming. We also are releasing with a slightly wider audience from the product support team as well, little snippets that are available to anybody at any stage to try and walk you through the process of Plant 3D. It's a fairly logical sequence, and we're up to 10 videos, which is great, and quite a lot of interest in those. So I'm really, really happy to see people getting value out of those and hopefully getting a positive experience. So we've got 10 videos now, so I've updated this little slide. If you're interested in that, when you get this presentation, you can download that and the hyperlinks there. Alternatively, just Google Plant 3D with the experts. It's in YouTube. It's under the AutoCAD channel. It should be really easy to find. It's just a playlist. While I'm mentioning it, if I do go back to the website here, this is our resources store. At the top there, if you scroll down, you see the agenda, of course, for the rest of the year. And the January session there, so the agenda for that, and then you can watch the recording, get the recordings there for each session, and the presentations we use for each sessions are downloadables from this website, and anything else that we need to is also uploaded if it's relevant. So if you're looking for that, that's where you go. Again, if you Google search the Plant 3D Community Virtual Meetup Resource Store, it should come up to the top pretty easily. Okay, so talking about the meetups, we just wanted to show you again here, registration page, link there. It's on the resources store. There's a registration link. You can register for up to 3 months in a row. And once today's finished, which should be tomorrow in Europe, the rest of the sessions will be available. So you get March, April, and May, and you can register for 3, meaning they're on your calendar. You get your reminders and your notifications. Just see a question here on the cloud beta, so I'll answer that now. Thank you, Paul. I'm glad to see questions. It's a bit boring when there's no questions. Any issues with multiple users on projects in cloud beta? Absolutely, there should be not. So the whole point of going into a cloud environment, apart from simple advantages of versioning of files and online storage and a few those advantages, the huge advantage is you can take a simple local user environment and make it a cloud shareable global collaborative environment. So no, I haven't seen any any issues related to multiple users, it is an ideal way to go to a multiple user environment without having to build your own servers. Did I answer that? No problems. Send all. There we go. Thank you for that. I love getting questions. We don't get too many questions in APAC here, so I love when they do come through. Okay, so yes, so we left this slide in here. Again, it is a bit of a repeat from last month. We do want to draw your attention to it specifically, and this is probably the last month we bring it up, because in November last year we presented from AU, that's Autodesk University. The product manager or product director, Misha Bielowski, was presenting on Plant and its future. People always have questions about where's Plant going, is it going to be around the future, and all that sort of thing. He answers that in a wonderful way and with great detail. The simple answer is yes, it is going to be around for a long time. But if you need to point your management or anybody to that, that is where you can go and get an official statement. That it's online, it's available. You can get it from the AU website, from these links here. You can get it as the November meetup in the resources store as well. If you haven't seen it, strongly recommend at least watching that bit just to understand where things are going. If you are interested in this group or other groups, they are around. We've now released, since November last year, the groups network page. That's the link there if you're interested in other groups for other Autodesk products. We have a LinkedIn group for Plant 3D as well as this group we have here, but nothing else at the moment, unless there's somewhere I'm not aware of. If you're aware of some that are out there, please let us know. Tell them to go to there and register their group, because that'd be awesome to see more Plant content. Okay, so just double checking, no more questions, excellent. And jump right into the topic of the day. So project data integrity for Plant 3D. This is something that is something that we talk about all the time. Leading into Paul's question, when you're working on an SQLite project, 1 or 2 users only, if you go over that, there's issues with dual writing to databases and problems start, so you go to servers, and there's all questions around servers and stability and latency. And as Paul asked, multiple users in the cloud, how does that all work? There's so much detail around integrity. So what we're trying to understand here is how do we talk about data integrity? How does Plant work? And we're trying to understand what we can do to fix things. So what type of issues can we expect to see using Plant? Because it is 2 systems, you get a series of drawings and a database that supports the project. Huge advantages, also has potential for problems as well, particularly if it's not handled properly. So what issues can occur? What causes those issues, as best as our knowledge at least? How do we avoid these issues occurring in the first place, which in my mind is absolutely key. It's fine having problems. It's better to solve them. It's even better if we can prevent them occurring in the first place. And how do you recover and restore data? Now, we don't really have the time to go through all the problems and all the iterations. We'll go through what we can here. What we've listed out is some things that we see on a regular basis and can give you the answers that we understand to be the causes for these. And this is a collaboration effort from all the specialists around the world. We've got together and put these comments in here. So yeah, I hope you get some value out of it, but we can certainly talk to each of these points if you've got specific questions on any of them. Yeah, all right, so let's get into it. So what type of issues can occur? There's a couple of different areas we talk about. So there's the drawing files. The drawings are standalone, they are DWGs, which are supported by the project in the database. They can lose data. That's the Plant 3D object data lost in the DWG. May not be the graphics, it may be the physical properties within there. We have also seen the reverse, where the objects go missing as well, but there's fixes for that as well. And then we've got also simply a corrupt DWG. So when we talk about that in this particular case, we're often talking about it won't open because Plant 3D is trying to look at databases and rationalize things. Typically, you get into a bit of a loop and it just stops, and then you don't get anywhere. How do we address that? So DWG file issues, we're going to look into then, talk about the project database records. Again, looking about missing or out of sync with the drawing. So the drawing has it or the database has it, and the two, but not any other location. So how do we deal with that? And then when tags cannot be assigned. we'll touch on that as well. Project files, so configuration XML files is an interesting one. It's becoming less and less understood, which is a bit of a shame because there's so much power in there. They are the lifeblood of the configuration of a project. But doing it badly or doing something wrong in there, it is kind of code. It's easy to read, but it is still code. Can cause problems. Simple things like the incorrect file or file paths can cause massive problems, which seem unsurmountable. But again, fixing those can be fairly simple as long as you can find them. What causes issues? This is a huge sector, and in some ways we can say basically anything can cause them. In my personal experience, a lot of the time there's users that haven't been or trained fully or don't understand what's going on with the plant and the way that the database talks to the drawings and the drawings talk to the database. That causes a lot of those really early problems and becomes a massive issue. That said, let's not focus on users. Let's look at things that we can sort of prevent and we can fix outside of that in the engineering solutions. Excuse me, a bit croaky today. So we talk about hardware. Obviously, we can have a hard disk failure. We can have bad sectors. Anything very rare today, but still is a possibility. Particularly we talk about data farms and things like that, as well as basic memory failure loss. Those things can either be RAM in the system, or it can be even packet data across the network. Software causes a lot of grief in a lot of cases. Third-party add-ons for AutoCAD that are not intended for plant objects can cause problems. Competitive products in the same system can cause installation problems as well as simply DWG cleanup. Retaining old templates that have been used for the last 15 years, while that seems smart and can be useful to go back to certain things, all that wait can make things take longer and cause problems. Simple things like a reg app cleanout can just make life a lot easier with a lot of DWGs. And that's part of standard maintenance in a lot of ways. Network infrastructure, I know this is really very much in the IT side of things in a lot of places, but faulty network routers or switches, my goodness, they can be hard to problem solve. I don't know how many hours we've each spent in working with IT, trying to figure out why things aren't connecting, only to find there's a faulty switch, which is packet loss in the system and just causing you all sorts of issues. Making sure you've got a good, robust network, both LAN and WAN, as well as internet, is imperative, particularly if you're looking for efficiency and speed, as well as reliability, but handles them fairly well, but they are always going to be something we need to be aware of, as well as something simple as failure during the save or data going into the SQL server. This is something we see so often, less so on the save side, although typically something might happen. You might run out of RAM on your machine and the drawing fails during that save, or it's just way too heavy. I've been dealing with cases recently where the drawing files are just massive, with XREFs and all sorts of things, causing the files in the system to overload, and plant was just shutting down, being shut down by Windows actually, and we weren't even getting a report on it. It was just shutting it down because Windows was out of space basically. And data going to SQL servers or even to the collaboration servers, less of a problem with collaboration because it's across the internet. There's generally enough bandwidth there. We don't see the same problems, and our data servers are expandable and they do all the wonderful things that cloud servers do. But if you've got issues with bandwidth getting to your servers and you're not getting there and writing efficiently, or the server's not running fast enough, you can end up with loss of data. End of the day, SQL, with its light or server, is still one line at a time, and it has to bank the rest and do it progressively. So it's just, I think it's a fair statement. I could be wrong, but that's my understanding. So there is an issue there about making sure you've got the maximum availability sort of to push all that data to where it needs to go. So when we're talking about all these issues, that's a lot of things to think about. Let's just boil that down to what causes the issues. We've got two graphics here, and we're actually looking into releasing an article with some of this stuff in it, so stay posted for that. Hopefully next month we'll have that in the virtual meetup, tell you where to go to look for it. So when you're opening a drawing, so you open a DWG in Plan, it is a DWG and it opens up. But we also need to connect to the SQL server because that is part of that connection, and it needs to be part of that startup process. So if it's connected, does it find it? Yes, no. If it doesn't find it, you get an error message, which is not good. But then that's when we need to go in our problem solving and try to figure out why is it not opening up. Hopefully the error message tells you why and makes that an easy solve. If it can connect, obviously we want to check that the drawing was saved okay. Is it all good? Is it stable? Is everything happy? In the case that it is yes, local caches get synced when it's appropriate, and is the local cache synced when it's appropriate? Yes, and there should be a yes there somewhere saying it's all fine. All right, so you run around that, and you can see there that the real message here is there's not constant but regular communication with the SQL database. Now with Plant, you notice if you copy a drawing into a project, it brings all those properties with it, and that is because we are saving to the drawing blob as well. Term I find remarkably amusing, probably showing my ignorance of age. So when you save a drawing, the data is saved into the drawing blob, and then it is communicated back to SQL server. And if all that works properly, it's fine and everything goes as you'd expect. It's when things don't happen and we get communication errors that will start getting those error messages. And you can see how complicated this is, and maybe you can understand why some of the error messages don't necessarily make sense. So when we're saving the drawing here, we come across, we see we go to excuse me, is it connected to the SQL server? No, it will still update the drawing blob from the memory, and that's great because then it's retained within the DWG. But of course, we should get an error message there or something telling us it hasn't connected to the server. And some testing I did that will show you, yeah, it'll tell you that. If it is connected to the server, of course, then the server gets update through the queries, and that then follows into the local data cache, which is great, and as well as updating the drawing blob, which happens as well, and the drawing is fully saved. If that doesn't flow properly, again, we should get errors, and that's when we start hitting problems. It's good to understand that, try to understand the way things are going. If we get a server disconnect, so there's a couple of, so we talked about SQLite projects. So when you're working with SQLite, and that can be on a network or it can be local. So if you're working locally, you're unlikely to get any warnings about server disconnects. I haven't personally seen that we are on a networked project. So that is an SQLite, one single user project on a network that has this network disconnect issue, but it is feasible that if it can't communicate effectively, you might start seeing issues like this, in which case I'd be looking into network performance or some sort of issues with the network, because there really should be, as long as there's only one user in a Plant project with SQLite at a time, there should be no issues with this, that sort of arrangement. When you go to an SQL server so that you can add multiple users, so that becomes a dedicated server environment that purely holds the Plant database. So we go from SQLite to SQL server. If that disconnects for some reason, whether the server goes down or your machine loses connection, these are the errors you're going to get. It's a new warning that comes in Plant 2020. There are similar ones that happen at various stages in older products, but we've built this to be more robust. In previous times, you used to be able to keep working in the Plant drawing without any issue because it would write to the blob and to the local data cache. What happens now is when you've lost that connection, because you're no longer writing to the server, you're only writing to the local data cache, we are giving you a warning now to tell you that that isn't happening, and that's what you're going to see. Okay, so that tells you to as a user, to stop drafting, go and find out what's going wrong with your project, and there's a couple of other icon issues that will show, like the Plant one will show a disconnect and a few things. In a collaboration environment, I did exactly this test yesterday myself. When you disconnect, again, you're working in a local data cache. You're going to get a lot of the similar things, although you can keep working until there's something happens that triggers the communication with the server. So if you've got a DWG open and your spec is local, you can keep drafting because it's still updating the SQLite cache data, which only updates the collaboration server when you do a save or a check-in. When you do a check-in, depending how you start the saves. All right, so if you lose connection, you can keep working in that project, but you can't do anything else that requires connection to the cloud. So you can't open another drawing, even if it's local, to edit it, because you can't do the checkout. If you have it locally, you can open it read-only, but only because that's not requiring communication with the server. Once you reconnect with the server, in theory, and I say in theory because testing shows that this works, and it should work, but there is potential for problem. Once you reconnect to the server, it should synchronize that data cache, the local one, and any drawings you check in should synchronize then back to the server, and it should be a normal circumstance. The longer you're disconnected, though, I will suggest the more chances you get for problems. Simple things like tagging assignments on equipment or line numbers, any tags that you put in that might have duplicates, for example, are something you have to resolve when you check in to fix that issue. It becomes a risk assessment thing you do yourself or organizationally, but it is possible in a collaboration process to keep working so long as you've got the resources locally. I did try to open a new spec to do. That was the error I got. Yeah, so it's all about that communication to the server, and you will get similar warnings with the disconnect as well. Just going to check questions on that while I'm waiting. I don't see any other questions. That's fine. Right. So what causes issues? So we talked about hardware, software, and network infrastructure. SQLite on network and multi-user environments. There's this wonderful little Autodesk Knowledge Network article on SQLite versus SQL Server for AutoCAD Plant 3D. The simple version of that is if you've got one user, maybe two, working on a project, the Plant 3D writes to SQLite one row at a time. And that's just the way it works. If you've got two users and they're trying to push data at the same time, it can cause a backup, and there's a limit to that, and it can all start causing problems if there's more than one user. One user, absolutely not a problem. Two users, probably okay. Any more than that, we strongly recommend going to a server who can handle the extra buffering of all the queries. So read that if you're thinking about it, and Paul, that may be something you're interested in too, to specifically look at the differences there. Don't forget there is a cost in having SQL servers stood up and maintaining those, creating your own backups, all those sort of things. Personally, I love the option of going to BIM 360 and having all that secured for you, but there's obviously reasons to go both directions. That's there if you're interested in it, and absolutely let us know if you've got any questions on that. How to avoid the issues. Piece to resistance, the thing everybody wants to know. What it comes down to in a lot of ways is robust systems and routine maintenance, as well as understanding how the projects work and quality training, in my mind. So first thing we're going to look at, I'm going to say actually right above that, there should be user training. All users should be well trained and well familiar with Plant 3D and its processes, as well as administrators, and understanding that is key to any project being successful. Now, you don't jump in a car and drive it or a forklift without trying to, actually you might do a forklift. Any piece of machinery, you would learn how to use it before jumping in, or at least familiarize yourself adequately. But once you're past all that, auditing projects on a regular basis is really important. There's so many things we do, dropping in lines to run, is this pipe going to fit there, run a line, or we put in a line on a PNID, and then we take it out, move things, just changing things around. So much that adds and removes entries into the system that can leave blank entries and blank fields. Running those audit project is really good for just lightening up that whole project, and there's server-side stuff you can do too, which we talk about in .point 3 there, to compress the databases and just make things run better. SQL server maintenance, yes, do that when you can. Do that on a regular basis. I think we talked about it weekly. Cleaning out redundant entries, keeping things light, it means that things are going to be much smoother and much faster. Much faster being relative, of course, depending on how much issue you've got. Maintain regular project SQL backups. This is really important to maintain those and keep them in parity. because the project database, so the SQL backup, is looking for a particular version of a drawing that it knows was there, and that's the one it's looking for. If those two backups are not in sync, then there's a whole lot of rectification you're going to do. It's absolutely doable. There's ways and means to do nearly anything, but if you can keep those two things in parity, that means you've got less problems, and do them regularly. I don't know how many times I've heard someone complaining because they do a weekly backup and then they've got to recover a week worth of work. It's not you just lost a week of work, you've lost a week of intent, design and cognitive thought and high-end development and redesigning it. Even though it's faster, there's still a lot of loss there. So backups are comparatively cheap. It's worth doing that effectively. Now, coming from Autodesk, it's probably not surprising we're saying install the latest version and the updates and hotfixes. Of course, we would suggest being on the latest version. No argument from me. I come from Autodesk, but I also come from industry, and I've had the arguments as well. I understand there's problems and there's reasons why not to upgrade. There's client requirements and there's contractual requirements, all sorts of reasons. Any reason under the sun, I guarantee you I've heard it. But I have yet to see anybody give a good reason why they can't do an update and even some hot fixes. It is absolutely imperative as a general statement to get all the updates and hot fixes you can possibly get into your product for the given version you're on as fast as possible within reason. All right, we do a lot of work we can to increase reliability and stability. We don't release them for our enjoyment, it's for your benefit, and getting them in there is only going to help your environment, the users, and things move forward. Talking about full versions, going from 19 to 20, all those things are great, and there's huge advantages to doing that too. But again, it's understandable. You can't do that all the time. I know companies that do it every other year. I personally love being on the latest version, but again, it really depends on your environment. We recommend it, but you need to make that risk assessment for yourself as well. Being 3 and 4 versions behind is not doing anybody any favors, though. I can tell you that now. There's so many changes that are happening. Getting up to the latest version you can is a significant improvement. We're saying you don't use Wi-Fi connections to servers, and also suggesting there is Wi-Fi connections, while it's wonderful being untethered, they're not perfect. They're often disconnect. They're often a little bit unstable. And if you're walking around, you pick up your laptop and you move to another meeting room or things like that, they're often changing the access points and things are disconnecting and reconnecting. And that can have serious problems when you connect into servers and trying to transfer data, and you can get it can get a bit messy. You can imagine doing that in actual pipes would be pretty messy. So it's a recommendation to try and avoid that. That's if you're sitting still, it's less of a problem. However, still they have a tendency to come and go depending on what's going on. Can be highly unstable is the simple point there. The other one we've got is probably a lesson learned from experience. Don't close your laptop in the sleep mode before saving. It just means that everything's stagnant. While you might not do that 100 times and be fine, 101st time, it might cause you significant problems in a project. And there's nothing worse than data corruption in a Plant 3D project. It can be pervasive and difficult to resolve. It's much easier just to hit save, make sure everything is saved and locked in and cached before you put your machine to sleep. I even like to close my project before I close Plant 3D down. And if you're just moving around, just hit save all, right-click on the tabs, save all drawings, and then wait till it's finished, then put your machine to sleep and move around if you need to. That's just one of those things we've learned from experience, and can be one of those little hidden, it's broken and I don't know why kind of answers. Righto, so how do we recover from these things? Restore from a recent backup. A lot of people I've talked to in the past disable autosaves. Sometimes that's okay. I never come across a good reason to do it permanently. Changing the times, absolutely. Make it set up that suits you and your teams, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, even an hour, whatever works for you, but still have autosaves. Because if you go out for lunch and you come back and there's been a brownout and you've lost everything, you can at least get the DWGs from the autosave and get it back in, and you can see the process there, and you can at least recover some of that data. It's just one of those things that people don't put a lot of value on because it's a rare thing. It is an insurance policy. And plant audit command as well. This removes objects in the DWGs that are not corresponding to database references. So we can have instances where you have database references and no elements in the PNIDs, or in the plant drawings because they've been removed. That's where we do the project audit, that cleans that up. In reverse, if you've got drawings in the DWGs and no corresponding database entries, we can do a plant audit and that can clean that up. Plant 2019.2 and 2020, and 2020, it can now correct corrupted piping geometry. So what we're saying there is, in these versions, and classic example for updating in 2019.2, when you've got entities in the drawing blob that have properties attached to them, and for some reason they're lost in the database, maybe the packet got lost and they were never added. When you run a plant audit, that can now be corrected by plant looking at that, or they're disconnected is the other way to look at it. There's still database entry, but there's a different entry number, and the two things aren't connected. We can now connect those. I would like to say 100% of the time, but let's just say not. There's potential for them to be connected, and I guess we'd love to hear your feedback on that as well. So again, that's only for 2019.2, 2020. One of the things we've fixed and looked into, and potential has some strong solutions for you there. Right, excuse me. That took a lot longer than I expected. So we're into the Q&A section. We did talk to Paul, and you had your question about the cloud beta. So done that. That's excellent. I'd love to hear from anybody else. If you've got any questions, you can either raise your hand or you can pop your question into the question panel and we'll answer it here. I've got Plant 3D open if you want to go into anything. I've also got the web browser open, so I'm happy to go into anything you want to look at. Intention for this year, and do that at any stage, don't need to wait for me. What we're trying to do this year is we traditionally run for half an hour, and we would be kind of finished now, and we should be kind of over now. What we wanted to do is moving into a line with the rest of the virtual meetups, rest of the meetups, not all virtual. With the meetups, they're about an hour. So the architecture, the civil guys, they're all meeting for an hour, the electrical guys, and doing demos. We've asked you last year what you found valuable, and this discussions, there's tips and tricks coming from our experiences people found valuable. And from our experience, particularly in Asia Pacific, there's often not a lot of questions. So we want to make sure that we can provide you with some value from that perspective. But we're going to the slightly longer format where we're allowing an hour. When we say allowing an hour, which means we can go up to an hour before we start running into overtime. So the intention is the first half hour will be some news, keep you up to date, show you what some issues, show you some things to keep you working better from our experience. And the last half hour is tended to be a bit of Q&A. Maybe you just bring something that's bugging you with plant, let me know. We can look into it. I can open up my plant. We can see if I can replicate it. Honestly, it doesn't matter. Anything to do with the plant industry, even Autodesk more generally, I'm happy to try and answer any of those questions you've got, whether it's in a product demo or not. Now, I'm not seeing anything come out, so that's fine. Rather than sit here in utter silence, I'll keep chatting, and we'll go into what happened last month. I thought I saw something there. Somebody chat. No chat. Okay, that's fine. So last month in America, they did have one question about does Autodesk have any plans to add additional functionality to plant? I can't read that because my panel's in the way. I need to move that to better plant support mining, minerals processing, and bulk material handling industries. Look, honest answer is, we're always going to be honest here, we always want to support you in everything you're doing. Your success is our success. That's the simple answer. That's the simple, honest to God truth. Autodesk wants you to succeed using our product. I don't really fully understand what the question is there, whether you want us to start doing some sort of, I don't know what materials it's specific talking about. We're not going to start doing conveyors in Plant 3D. That's not what you'd use Plant 3D before. I would suggest there's a lot of things that happen in the mining and the bulk and materials handling industry that are honestly much better suited to something like Fusion 360 or an Autodesk Inventor. And if you've got pipes around that, then absolutely there's a great workflow to join that into the plant environment for the piping side of it. We don't have all the materials available for every possible standard or spec. We've done a number of highly common ones, and even they're not 100%. There's things that just aren't there because we can't do absolutely everything everybody wants. The whole idea around Plant 3D is to make it easy as we can for you to be able to produce those materials. So if you're doing a unique spec that is unique to the mining industry, then create those catalogs, and we can help you do that through the digital content and the learning. And I would actually suggest if you're going to build that material, once you pop it up into the App Store, you can either do it free or maybe you can get someone to pay for it and share that effort, or maybe put it in the forums. So yeah, I think we will eventually, but honestly, I would suggest that specific field is not on our future plan as a specific area. Is my interpretation. Oh, excellent questions. I love it. Love to see questions. All right, Ali, thank you. Do we have or come across a P&ID comparison study against the like of, let's just say, competitive products, and third-party study or customer feedback would be good. I haven't personally seen a comparative study. Yeah, so direct comparison, one product for the other. No, I haven't seen. I have seen some things talking about advantages of one over the other, but it was a very top level, I like to say fluffy terminology. It's a bit of a sales thing. I don't know that it's particularly useful. Ali, let me have a look into that and see if I'll ask around the group and see if anybody's seen anything there. And if we do have something, we'll put some links in the resources store so that you can find them, and I should hopefully be able to let you know directly as well. But at the very least, I'll put those answers in next month's meetup so you can get a definitive answer. I thought I could say answered live on here somewhere. Doesn't matter. I'll keep moving on. And David, thank you. I'm glad that answered your question, Ali. Thank you for letting me know. And from David, is there any value in pursuing engineers direct SQL? Sorry, let me rephrase that. Is there any value in pursuing engineers direct access to the SQL Server database? Particularly talking about P&IDs, I'm suggesting we only use the data manager for read-write control. Yeah, this is actually a really interesting question. So forgive me if I go on a bit at length. There's a couple of things to consider there. Coming from my design background, there were certain things that I would have loved to be able to let the engineers put into the database directly. However, in my highly risk-averse nature, I found that I didn't want them to do that because I wanted to validate it before it went in, because I didn't always understand what they were populating. And as a designer in that particular environment, I was the custodian of the data, not the custodian of the intelligence, just the data storage. So in that particular case, I much preferred to export a data set, allow them to update a spreadsheet, and then be able to import it. Gave me more control over it. However, that was in comparison relatively small and low cycle. So we could do that on a daily, even weekly basis without any issues. I know absolutely people out there that do this and they love it and I think it's wonderful, and I think there's a place for that. There are tools for that out there, and certainly if you're using SQL Server, there's absolutely ways to enable that. I would discourage it potentially if you're using a SQLite system, because I don't know how that would actually function. Certainly because it becomes a multi-access platform. The other side of that, so that's SQLite, probably not a good idea. SQL Server definitely has advantages so long as the systems and procedures are in place to support that. And there are absolutely tools. And all I'll suggest is have a look at the App Store for tools around that can aid you in that. A lot of them I've looked at, never actually tested personally, and frankly, they're quite impressive. And there's some wonderful AU classes on them as well. So there are advantages, but again, it really depends on whether you've got the support structure there. Now, if we just touch on collaboration for a second, Plant 3D collaboration, you have no direct access to the server. All right, so there is no way you can find the server. It is embedded in the system. It's hidden from everybody. It's just no way to directly access it. If you're giving your process engineers, process engineers? Call it process engineers, Plant 3D, and they're able to use the data manager, then they can probably do something around that as well. So it really becomes that sort of very unique to each individual circumstance. I hope that answers the question, David. If it doesn't, please let me know, and we can certainly come back to that. Ali, another question from you. Do we have a future plan to move or store the graphics, actually the models and drawings, in the database? Moving from file-based to completely data-centric environment. Thank you for confirming, David. I'm glad I was able to answer that for you. I couldn't tell you, sorry, Ali, to answer that, I can't tell you whether it's on the plan. I simply don't know. What I can tell you is I have not heard of that being talked about for Plant 3D. I would suggest that as a product platform, we are looking at all options to be able to leverage all advantage to make the product work better for everybody going forward. And the process that we use to do that will be the one that has the most value to our customers. So the short answer is I can't answer that. The long answer is possibly, but there's no way I could tell you that even if I did know, because it'd be so far in the future that it wouldn't be something we could share. Simple answer is I don't know at all. The future-looking statement won't go into that. It is just about where the plan is going, what our view is in the future, and as a platform with AutoCAD, it has a long, healthy future. So if I think about that for a moment, if it's AutoCAD based, AutoCAD is always probably going to be DWG based, so it probably won't head down that path. I have heard people talk about it in other areas of the business, but look, I honestly don't know. If that is something that is critical, one of the statements we often give is, if Plant 3D works for you today, then that is awesome and absolutely use it. If you're waiting for something to be released or to be added or changed before it works for you, then it's probably not the product for you. As much as we want to get everything for everybody, we can't make it work for everybody perfectly in the way they want it, because you can't please everybody all the time, I think is the phrase. So if you're wanting to use a competitive product that does have data-centric modeling, then absolutely, if that's what you need, then go down that path. I wouldn't discourage you if that's what your business need is. For the time being, and certainly for a long time in the future, I would expect nothing other than DWG formats for Plant 3D. But there's advantages in that too. This is great. I love this. I haven't had this many questions in this environment for a while, so I'm loving this. Anything else? I covered all those questions. Okay. While we wait, because there might be someone thinking while they're typing. So I talked about the follow-up from last month. we had the open Q&A there, and I will say thank you for coming, guys. Like, I really, honestly appreciate you coming. There's not no small amount of effort goes into building these presentations and planning, and I really do honestly love engaging with you. And the questions have just been great. I love that. It's just wonderful to hear people and get some feedback there. So that is excellent. So thank you for making the time and coming and engaging. If you want to download this presentation, we do have a lot of links in here that you can access, the hyperlinked and the pathing. In the back, we also have reference material to a whole bunch of things that we find we regularly share with people. Autodesk YouTube links there, the Knowledge Network University, in the Pipes articles. And as I talked about before, I showed you live, we are publishing all these to the resources page, and I don't think there's actually a hyperlink there. Just Google that, it'll come up. And you can see we have the presentations for each of them, and we add in the recording when it comes up, which is not shown on that screen. Anyway, you can download the presentations so you can access those hyperlinks nice and easy. And if there's additional resources, we'll add it here as well as downloadable. If you do have team members that are interested in other areas or working in other areas, or you're working in other areas, we are running a number of virtual meetups for other disciplines. So we're probably the most restrictive. One of this, the plant engineer, electrical engineer as well. We have civil, electrical, BIM manager, and the architect threads that happen all throughout the month. So if you've got interest in other areas as well, everyone has slightly different threads, but they're all around those areas, and they're worth definitely having a look at if you're interested in them, or at least sharing with people that might know that will get value out of it from within your organization. The other thing is we have moved the Plant 3D with the Experts blog. It was previously with one service, I think TypePad or something, and it's now with somebody else. So I think the old links still work. I think it's still there, but the new articles are all going to a new site. So you might need to change any hyperlinks you've got or saved things. I think the last article we posted there drove you pointed you to the right location. And like I said, we are running 3 around the world. So in about, I'm not even sure what time that is. It's in about 12 hours of the European one will run. So if you're running a global business, share those across the world, and people can catch up on. It is the same content roughly, but obviously the Q&A, the big part of it varies in each region. There's the move slide that tells you where the new hyperlink is. I'll leave that there for a moment. But that's it. No one's put any other questions in, so I'll leave that. I will take an action, Ali, to get that information about competitor comparisons for you, see if we've got any. I don't think we do though, so I'll just warn you out with that. But we'll certainly get you a definitive answer by next month. And the other 2 I think I answered on the fly, so that's okay. If you've got any other questions, jump into the forums, put them in there. Feel free to comment for me to jump in there and talk to you as well. I would just encourage conversation in there. Okay. Any direct issues, of course, log a case, and our team will get on to you. I work with them all the time, so you're not being left out in the wind at all. Thank you very much for coming. I'll go back to my closing slide. Thank you very much for coming. I really, really love to see the attendance. It's wonderful to speak to you. I really hope to see you next month, and enjoy the rest of your day.